My name is Jon Maddog Hall. I'm the Executive Director of Linux International. That is a vendor organization that is trying to promote the use of free software around the world. We started in 1994, and we helped to start some of the organizations like the Linux Professional Institute, which does certification for systems administrators. And we also helped to start the Free Standards Group, which creates standards for free software so that people can write software that will run both on BSD as well as Linux and other operating systems. Well, first of all, I kind of object to anything being called a standard where nobody has been able to implement it yet. And as far as I know, there has been no real implementation of the OOXML standard, even by Microsoft itself. I think there was a lot of people who were disappointed in ISO in the way that that came out. And a lot of people feel that ISO has lost a lot of its prestige as a standards organization because of that. That having been said, there's nothing which says that people have to specify OOXML as a standard, nor do people have to accept it as a standard. So people can still specify ODF as a standard that they want to use for document interchange. People need to determine what standards they really want to have for practical purposes. And if you have a specification or a standard which you cannot fully implement, and you cannot fully understand, and you cannot fully be able to read 50 years from now, then that's not really a standard at all, no matter what ISO says. I started using the equivalent of free software in 1969. I was a university student, and at that time, a compiler, for example, would cost 100,000 US dollars per copy. As a student, I didn't have 100,000 US dollars to pay for a compiler. And so I started getting software from an organization known as DECUS. It was a user organization, and people would write software and contribute it to the DECUS library. As a student, I would buy a compiler for 5 US dollars, and that I could afford.
Yeah.
But then I would take the software, and I would make copies of it and sell it to my roommates for $1 a copy, which they could afford. And I would eventually make back all of my money, plus enough money for beer, which was very important to a college student.
For free beer. Yeah, well, anyway.
It was a service.
It is. Was it legal to do that? It was
Yes.
legal to copy?
Yes, it was.
software.
Well, actually, in those days, there was no such thing as copyright on software. Copyright on software only happened during the 1980s. And patents on software happened even after that. So it was completely legal. Not only was it legal, but it was actually encouraged by DECUS and encouraged by the people who wrote the software, because their idea of exchanging software or donating software, whatever you want to call it, meant that more people used their software, and therefore more people benefited from their software. So the more people who used it, the happier they were. Well, I would tell them that right now Microsoft is trying to get them to go to Vista or maybe Windows 7. My personal feeling, this is the time that they should be going to Linux. And if they're going to make the investment in moving their applications and updating their hardware and everything else to either Vista or Windows 7, I would personally go to Linux and make that investment in that direction.
Yeah, one last question. Just because of Windows Vista or Windows 7, there's lots of people that are changing to Mac. Convince them not to go to Mac and go to Linux.
Because then Apple would become the next Microsoft. And since it's still not free, you would still be a software slave.
Why is it important to remain free?
Freedom is choice. Freedom is the ability to control your business. Freedom is the ability to get a bug fix when you need it instead of when a company tells you that it's going to give it to you. Freedom is the ability to invest in the extension of the software to meet your business needs instead of waiting forever for somebody to give you that update. I used to work for a large closed source company. I used to see the problems that our customers would go through waiting for us to be able to try and meet their needs. And it's not that we didn't want to meet their needs. We wanted to. It's just it was impossible. When you get to a certain number of customers, say millions of customers, how do you meet the needs of every single one? That's impossible. It's impossible for Microsoft. It's impossible for Sun Microsystems. It's impossible for Apple. Only when you have free software do you have the freedom to make the investment and go in and change the software to be what you need it to be.
I have a bar, so like you do, and then the question is, how long does it take to grow? That
40 years.
40 years. Oh yeah. All right. I have 40 years to go now.
I did trim it once or twice.
Thank you very much. And one question, if it's a personal question, which distro do you use?
I use the distro which is best for me.
Okay. That's perfect, because it's free software, can adapt. Well, thank you very much.